Hello everyone and welcome back to another speed build on The Sims 3. So this is a pretty cool build. Most likely none of the people who are watching this video have ever heard of this, but that's kind of exciting. And if you get introduced to something new, that's always cool too. So this is an old Victorian style mansion, based on, well, not based, it is as close to a replica as I could create of the house in the video game called Layers of Fear. Now, Layers of Fear is a psychological horror game for the PlayStation 4 and the PC. It might be for the Xbox as well. I'm not sure about that. I've never been an Xbox player. But yeah, so Layers of Fear is a really cool game. It's really pretty, it's excellently made, and I think it's one of my favorite horror games that I've ever played. So because of that, in light of that game, that's what made me want to do this. So I've said before that I mostly make my Sims builds based on things that I want to do. I build for me, you know? I don't exactly expect people to watch it. And if people have recommendations and stuff, I'll be like, yeah, sure, I could try to build something like that. But in the end, I'm kind of going to do what I really want to do. And in this case, I really wanted to do this mansion. It's pretty darn cool. So right off the bat here, you see that I'm starting off with the split level staircase, because the split leveling and the constrained floor thing just takes so much time. I want to make sure I get those landmarks done in the house before I get to the rest of it. And then otherwise, I focused a hell of a lot on the floor plan, because in this game, it's a first-person game and you are in the house, this Victorian house, and you never see the outside. You never go out into a yard or a garden or anything. The entire game takes place indoors. So there's no semblance of what the outside of this house looks like. And because of that, I wanted to make sure I got the rooms right, because they were the most important. So I really did not care much about the outside of the build, which made certain parts of this more difficult than normal. But in the end, though, I think I did a pretty good job. Yeah, so that's what I'm doing right now. As you can, I'm not even thinking about the outside. I'm literally, at this point, I had the game open on my PlayStation, and I was just walking through the rooms and pressing pause a lot to make sure I got the shape of them pretty, at least right. So that was kind of fun. There are also going to be a lot of cuts throughout this video, because this thing took me ages to finish, just through all the precisities and the decorating and the recolors of stuff. This build took forever, and yeah, so there's going to be a lot of cutting going on. I mean, that's pretty usual for my builds, actually, because I'm a pretty slow builder, so I have to cut in order to make things work. But yeah, and also the primary focus of this video is going to be decorating, because I feel like decoration is what I do. It's what I do best, it's what I do most. Yeah, so a little bit about Layers of Fear, I suppose. Well, I guess first of all, I am a huge fan of horror. Horror is one of my favorite genres ever, and most people are very surprised to hear that, especially from a girl for some reason. It seems to surprise more people that when a female likes horror than others, which seems a little backwards, but whatever, right? But yeah, I love horror, all kinds. I love horror games, I love movies, and I love books. I love all of it. I like to be scared. And when I say horror, even though there are like gory things that I do enjoy, I like the psychological genre better than like not mass murder. Mass murder is always fun. What's the word? Torture. Like torture porn and stuff is the kind that I think is kind of lackluster. I'm sure there are better torture porn kind of horror games, films, whatever, out there, and those are probably fine and everything. They're just not up my alley usually. So it's the psychological stuff, the ghost stuff, the hauntings, the serial killers coming to get you in the woods. Those are the ones that I get really spooked about, and they get me too. Like, it's not like I don't get scared during these horror genre things. Like, I get so scared. I will jump, I will scream, I will be like, oh my gosh. But it's like a roller coaster for me. I think it's like the adrenaline rush, and that's what I enjoy most about them. And also there's like this ongoing stereotype toward the horror genre in general, where people think it's very simple. It's like they think it's like a throwaway genre, that it's not worth very much. And that's because there are a lot of really, really sucky horror films out there. Like, it's very easy to make a very bad horror piece of anything. But at the same time, there are very good horror movies and horror games, like very well made with good stories and characters and cinematography that's done really well. So if you think you know horror without, or if you have a critique about horror and you've never actually seen stuff because you're afraid of it, don't do that. At least kind of man up and watch something before you give a quick judgment. Yeah, that's a little preachy. I'm sorry about that. That was a bit preachy. But yeah, I have to defend myself because I love this stuff so much, you know? It's just what you kind of do. But yeah, so Layers of Fear is a game that came out about a year ago, I think it did, 2016, I'm pretty sure, in the very beginning it came out. And I played it like a few months ago. I played it during Christmas break. I'm in college, so Christmas break happened. But yeah, so I just was like, I really want to play a horror game that I haven't heard of, and I'm not usually up to date on new things coming out, so I was just like, what's a good list? And I found a list of like top 10 horror games for the PlayStation that are out there, and this one was like, this one sounded intriguing, so I bought it off the PlayStation Network, and oh my goodness, I'm so glad that I did. Because yeah, like I said, it's uber cool. Like, if you like horror, would recommend. So the premise of this horror game is that you are a painter, and it takes place, I would say, around the turn of the 19th century, or not 19th, that's it, turn of the 20th century. So at like around the 1900s, because there is electricity in the game, but it's also, you could tell from the styles that it's also very old. There's a very aged, antique quality to everything. The furnishing, the photos, all the stuff. The music, there's like record players, and the only electricity there is really in the lights fixtures. So yeah, when you think about that, it's not modern at all, and it's not like super old either. So yeah, I'd say about 1900s is about right. But so you are a painter, and like a professional painter, like you make amazing portraits and you're very talented and you're a dude. And something horribly, horribly tragic has happened to you and your family, to be more specific. And it's basically caused the painter, the main character here, to go insane. And the whole game is basically kind of like a spooky puzzle-solving game, where as a first person, you wander through as the painter and you kind of discover things about yourself. You discover what happened to him, you discover his life, and you discover why he's so crazy. And the whole game is very spooky, to put it very lightly. If there's one thing that Layers of Fear does very well, it does atmosphere. The atmosphere in this game is top notch. I cannot praise the creators of this game enough for that. Like, it's very well done, and also the level design is very well done, because like it guides you very appropriately from one section to the next. It's very effective that way. The scares, like I said, they're mainly atmosphere with tension and jump scares, which is usually sad, because jump scares are usually horrible things, but this game does them in such a way that they actually are very effective and they feel like they fit, which is hard to do, especially in modern horror. So that is really good. Can't even, oh my goodness. So that's my general pitch for Layers of Fear, which doesn't tell you much. I'm trying to keep it spoiler free at this point. I will start talking about the actual story here in a second, so if you don't want to know about that, I would recommend putting your screen on mute for a while, because, like I said, I want to rave, and I don't have many people to talk to about this stuff, because all my friends and family, they don't do horror. I'm like the one person in my family that does. Everybody else screams and runs, and they like flinch, and they can't even talk about things, and I'm like, I want to talk about this cool game, and they're like, nope. So yeah, I kind of want to rave a little bit. And if you're not interested in horror, which I'm kind of assuming as a Sims community you might not be, but yeah, so then you can listen and hear what happens, and which is cool. Okay, so yeah. But yeah, so at this point you can see that I've finished the outside of the build, and I've begun the decoration points. And like I said, while I was doing this, I was literally just walking through on my PlayStation 4, just walking through the rooms and pressing pause to see what all the things looked like and building them appropriately. So I literally just made this whole thing on a room by room basis. The only thing that I did go back around and do off screen for the most part, I did the decorations and paintings, a painting pass. So yeah, so like there's a bunch of clutter, like fruits and vegetables and papers and paint things, because again, the main character is a painter. So there's a lot of art. Art is a huge theme throughout the game. Yeah, so I did all that off camera, and you will see the, excuse me, you'll see the completed products, of course, in the screenshots at the end of the video, which I am actually very proud of. I think this build turned out really good, in my personal opinion, for a Sims build based on a frickin' PlayStation 4 game, because the graphics are beautiful, like I said, in this game. So yes, at this point, I think I'm going to tell you the story of Layers of Fear and what happened and what's all going down, because I want to talk about it. So yeah, if you really, really don't want spoilers, now is the time to probably check out until about the screenshots, just in case. Or yeah, I might put something on the screen to let you know if it's safe to come back yet. I'm sorry. I just, yeah, have to talk about it. Okay, so the story of Layers of Fear, like I said, is revealed to you as you play. You go through the game and you slowly get these bits and pieces, and the only way you learn, you don't get flashbacks or anything. You get snippets of old conversations that are like memories, and you get, you pick up photographs and old notes that are written from one person to another, or a bill for something, or a doctor's clinical diagnosis of something, and through all those little pieces of information is how you build the story. So if you miss papers or if you just run through the game, you don't get this full story, which is sad. And I am a completionist in the hardest core of sense. I have to check every nook and cranny, no matter how scared I am. So because of that, I did a very good job of collecting all those notes and reading it all. So I think, I might be wrong, but I think I have a pretty good idea of the full story behind this game. So like I said, in Layers of Fear, you are a painter, and you marry, and so, actually, okay, so just so I can say, the story for this game is not gory. It is not. There's no gore in it, like, whatsoever. There's creepy imagery, for sure. It comes in spades, but it is not a gory game. Like I said, it's a very psychological horror game. But the story is actually very tragic. Like, it's pretty like heartfelt, devastating once you kind of get the whole gist of what happened. It's sad. So like I said, you are a painter and you marry this beautiful, beautiful songstress. So this girl is apparently, she's beautiful and she can play the violin and the piano and she sings opera and she's very, very renowned, very famous, very good at it, at her instrument. So she's a musician completely. And he is a world-famous painter, and they get married. So it's like a match made in heaven, right? And then the woman gets pregnant and with their baby, and they're very, very excited about this, of course. And she gives birth. And the baby is a little baby girl, and immediately after that birth, the wife falls into a pretty severe case of postpartum depression. The postpartum depression, in case you don't know, is basically where the hormones of a new mother go kind of out of whack, and it can cause a mother to not love her child or even to hate her child. So it's like this, you feel no attachment toward the baby you've just given birth to, and it also would affect like other things around your life where you could fall into severe depression. It is a very hormone-based, and it's a very real thing, and it affects women on different levels, depending... it just depends on the woman. But this man's wife gets it bad, and she falls into a harsh depression, so they start having marital problems. So in the midst of these marital problems, though, she goes out to shop at a department store, where there happens to be a horrible fire. The fire claims a decent set of lives and leaves many, many more injured. It's bad fire. And the wife survives. She does not die in this fire, but she is severely burned. Like, to the point where there's like a couple flashback segments and things where like you hear the conversation between the man and the doctor, and he's like, she looks like a corpse. Can't you fix her? And the doctor's like, no, there's literally nothing we can do. So she's deformed to past the point of no return. Like, she has like lost half of her face, and she can't use her hands anymore because the nerves in her hands are so fried that she can't play the piano or play violin anymore, which of course sucks because that was her livelihood and a source of joy for her. So of course the depression falls even harder, and of course she's always in constant pain because of these burns. So he has to take care of her, and the daughter of course does not get anywhere or does not get any fun from this entirely at all. So it somewhere along these lines is when the painter, our main character, starts to drink, and he becomes a raving alcoholic. Like, there's a few points throughout the game. Yeah, there's alcohol bottles everywhere, and I made a point to put those alcohol bottles throughout this build everywhere. So that was fun. Yeah, so he becomes a raving alcoholic. They can't talk to each other anymore. He becomes very belligerent as well. He can't handle life. And because of all the tragedy, all the artwork that he's been producing has been bad. Like, it's been creepy and weird and talentless, and basically all the critics start slamming him, and his stuff just loses popularity, drops off the face. It's just over, you know? Which of course makes his alcoholism worse and the wife's depression worse, because he can't even bear to look at his wife anymore because she's so deformed. She looks like a creature from a horror film, which is fun because she is in a horror game. But yes, so he's basically losing his mind. He shows forms of schizophrenia from all the tragedy that he's suffered. And finally, the wife can't take it anymore, so she goes and locks herself in the bathroom and cuts her wrists and dies and kills herself. So the wife dies, and the man, of course, in his grief, starts, like, evidently it's implied that he takes it out a couple times on his daughter. Like, I don't think he actually beats her or anything, but it's implied that he like hit her a couple times. And of course the environment is not great for the little girl at all. It cannot be. So she's like a toddler at this point. And the little girl is then taken away by the social workers. And so now he's lost everything, and he's living in this house, and he's by himself, and he can't paint anything, and he's just lost his mind. And that's where the game begins, is you are in this house and you're trying to paint a masterpiece. You want, like, that's like become his obsession. He wants to be able to get this one painting correct, and he feels like if he can get it right, then he can get back all the things that he's lost. It's this paranoid, delusional mindset, but that's what he's doing. So that's the whole story behind this game. And the game itself, though, the levels are very well done. It's one of those, it's really cool. Like, it's where you go from like one room to another, and you can open doors and then you just like turn around and you can open a door that you just went through and it'll lead to somewhere else. And it's very twisty and turny. It's very confusing. But at the same time, like, you feel lost, but in a good way, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah. And then, of course, as I said, as you're going through these segments of this game where you're wandering through your house in this twisted psychological weirdness, you're basically collecting materials to finish your masterpiece. And these pieces, it turns out, are very creepy. Like, the first one is a piece of skin, and the second one is blood, and it's basically saying that you are painting your masterpiece with human pieces. And throughout most of the game, I was so sure. I was very, very sure that I had murdered my wife and cut her up and was making her into a painting. But then it becomes also very clear later on that she killed herself. Like, the implications are there. And if she killed herself, and people know about it, because people are like telling him, like, mourning, and evidently there was a funeral and stuff like that. So if that happened, then he wouldn't have had the opportunity to cut up his wife. Like, that just would not have happened. So I think, and this is just me making an inference, I actually do not know this, but I honestly think that these pieces, like the skin that he's used for canvas and the blood, I think he's getting it from himself. Like, I think he actually starts shaving off some of his own skin to use in his painting, which is half the reason why he's always drunk and dizzy on pain, is because he's mutilating himself to try to make this perfect masterpiece. It's like, it would make sense too, because it means that he would have like a price to pay in order to get back what he's lost. Yeah, so like that's what I think personally, which is, again, creepy and tragic and hardcore in all the finest senses of that word, of those words. Yeah, so that is the entirety of the main story of Layers of Fear. Of course, even though the story is there, like I said, if you haven't played it, the playthrough is fun. It's a great game, and you should play it even if you don't like horror, or if you have been spoiled at this point as far as the story is concerned. I don't think that would take away very much from actually playing it, because the gameplay itself is so raw and inclusive. Like, it's cool. You should play it. Just go play it. Okay. Yeah, that's where I'll leave you guys. But yeah, and then there's also a downloadable content, a DLC, so it's like an add-on pack, which actually features the daughter. And it's called Layers of Fear Inheritance, and that was included in the bundle that I bought, so lucky me, I got to play more. But in this bundle, it's where you play the daughter, and the daughter's all grown up, and she's coming back to this house, and the house is all run down and everything at this point. But you get to see... you get to see certain rooms that you didn't get to see in the first playthrough. Because in the main game, there are like 3 doors that are locked, and you don't get to see what's inside of them. Inheritance lets you see the inside of those rooms. They're not very exciting, but I wanted to make sure to include them in this build because they're there, and I wanted to make sure that every door had an outcome behind that door. So I was very good about that. But yeah, so like there's this little tiny closet room on the top floor that has a bunch of paintings in it, and it's basically where there's like this loop ending where the painter, he's like painted this portrait of his wife so many times, and that's the masterpiece he wants to paint, but he keeps getting it wrong, or he feels like he can't get it right, so he just throws the portraits that he's finishing into this room, so they're just a bunch of discarded portraits in there. And so I tried to include that to the best of my abilities. There's another room that's like I think it was supposed to be a playroom at one point, but at the end of the DLC pack, it becomes like a shrine to his daughter. So that room is also in here. There's the basement, as you can see from the faraway view at this point here. Let's see, what other rooms? There was like one other room. Or 2. Oh, right, okay. And then also in the main painting studio, which is probably the biggest, not biggest as an actual large, but like the most important room in the whole game is the painting room. It's the workshop or something, whatever he calls it. And there's actually a hidden room off behind a cabinet set in there that leads to a second little painting room that he was leaving for his daughter. So there's like a second easel and painting room in there. Again, for Sims wise, it's not that functional, but this was about, for me, getting it right, which sounds kind of ironic because like the theme of the whole game was to get it right this time, get the painting right this time, and here I am, I'm like, I'm gonna get this Sims build right. So the outside of the build right now, we're about finishing up. I saved it for last because of course I don't see the outside of the build throughout the gameplay. So this was just me making up some things. I did include a gravestone in the backyard because that's where the wife is buried. I don't know. It feels like she should be nearby. So she's buried in the backyard now. And there's like a back gate, and I made sure to include some stuff on the porch because in all the pictures that I looked up of old Victorian houses, there are these very detailed porches, and I wanted to make sure to include that. Yeah, and some creepy, spooky trees, and that's the whole outside of the build, though. So it turned out pretty cool. But yeah, so of course, as you can see, there are certain areas that I did cut out. Just because I didn't have time for them. I mean, of course, and they get kind of repetitive too. If honestly, if I had kept this at full length without cutting stuff out, this would have been a feature length film. A Sims build that is as long as a movie. Like that, I don't think is good. That wouldn't be very appropriate. So yeah, I had just had to kind of make do. Yeah, so at this point, yeah, we're pretty much at the end, which is cool because usually I feel like I have a lot left to talk through. Yeah, okay. Oh, that's right. Here's the gravestone there. So here's where the wife's graves goes in. So you don't see it right here, but you will see in the screenshots. It's cool. I add like a couple little photographs next to the gravestone and a single rose. Or a red, I think it's supposed to be a rose. It's a red flower. I got it from a set off the Sims resource, and so I thought it looked very sad and romantic to put that stuff around this single gravestone, because this wife, she is heavily a main character, even though you don't really see her. She's like the ghost that's like haunting you in your mind. But, oh, okay, yeah. So here we go. So here are the screenshots. So we're going to start off with a few of the outside ones. Throughout these screenshots, you will see the reference that I used, or that I could find on the internet, because the reference I was actually using was the game that I was playing at the same time. But I found some still shots and some renders from online to show you here. There's the grave that I just talked about with the cool little antique photos. Kind of love that, very proud. So yeah, so this is the entrance hall. It's the first room you see in the game. Very cool, very nice. And this is the main living dining room, which is a fun turnaround. This was very fun to color. You can see all the clutter that I finally put in at this point. Like the papers on the floor, the bottles of booze. There's bottles of booze and wine throughout this entire house. So that's the reference. This is the first shot that you see where what the game actually looks like, which is, again, it's a very pretty game. So cool. And now, of course, you can see the comparisons to what I've created, and I hope it kind of lives up to it. I really hope it does. If you played the game or you play it and then you see this build after, like, let me know, because I would like to know if you think I did all right or not. Yeah, this one took me a while. So this is the kitchen from, of course, in-game. The detail is amazing. And the lighting, you can't get that kind of nice dim lighting. I was trying to make this room dimmer than it is, but there's a lot of lights in the kitchen. So this is a pantry that you see in the game. There's not a screenshot of it. Same thing, here's the bathroom. Much dirtier than you can get in The Sims, but still, you tried, right? Also, the pre-shots from the actual in-game footage, like, so the shots that you see, the house that you see before the game ends and at the end of the game, the ending of the game is very run down, so there's different levels of dirtiness to each room. So now we're going upstairs past the wall of portraits. You see the reference again. The portraits and the pictures that you see throughout the game are very creepy. So those are the closest renditions that I could get to those. Upstairs here, this is the upstairs landing. It's very similar to the ground floor, but at the same time, there it is. That's the creepy door at the end of the hall with lots of blood on the floor, which is probably the creepiest little thing. This is the bedroom, the main bedroom. Again, reference. So this one I think turned out pretty darn well, if I do say so myself, as far as being accurate. Huzzah, right? Let's see what comes after this. Oh, this is the little room at the very end of, it's like the shrine to the daughter. So that's what this one is. There's got a portrait of her on the wall. So this is the study. So there's actually this really creepy photo called Babyface over top of that study. And yeah, so that was fun to try to find a picture that could kind of reflect that. That was fun indeed. This is the canvas room that I talked about where all the discarded portraits are. I kind of had to make do with what I had, but that's what this turned out as. There's the actual image from the in-game footage that you get of that. And the little girl's room, which I think turned out, again, very well. This is one of the ones that I was more proud of than others. The reference to it. Gotta admit, it's so pretty. Look at that. It's a gorgeous game. So, and then finally the painting studios. So again, this is the other room I think I'm most proud of. This one turned out pretty darn cool. It's even got the little sitting area for the sitter so you can paint, and there's the bunch of alcohol in the trunk, so you can see that he's very much an alcoholic. In-game footage again. But that's the end of the build. Thanks so much for watching. Give me your opinions, drop me a like, and until next time, bye guys!